In Fairfield County, something new comes across my desk every day. Crimes are committed, cases are solved, and a community is made safe by the hardworking employees of the Fairfield County Sheriff's Office.
Welcome to This Week with Sheriff Dave Phelan, a weekly program here on LSN Television. We're also carried by a number of radio affiliates. Do appreciate you, the viewers and listeners that join us each and every week behind the scenes. Executive producer Kelly Roberts, and the program is actually produced here at Fairfield Christian Academy. I appreciate the students here, and certainly JT Bertram and all the gang that make this program possible. Guest is Chief Mike Tussey. Good to see you, Chief.
Good to see you, Sheriff.
Yeah, you join us, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a year.
I do.
Lots going on in Baltimore.
Has been busy lately.
Yeah.
Has been.
So good Christmas and
yeah, absolutely.
New Year's and everything.
Got to spend time with the family and do some things that are kind of traditional for us, and that's always nice. So.
Right. So the last year in 16, what are some of the highlights in Baltimore?
Well, we've been able to maintain our school resource officer program, which has really been outstanding as far as an outreach program to the community. It brings the kids in. They feel comfortable talking to the officers. They have somebody they can go to in a mentorship sort of role. And one of the things over the years we've discovered is it's opened doors for parents to come in and say, hey, I think I have a problem, or we think our child may be going down the wrong path. You know, what can we do? What are the resources we have available? So that's always something, something we've been able to maintain, and we know that in today's climate, sometimes you have to pick and choose financially what you can afford to do. But we've had a great partnership with Liberty Union Thurston Schools. They've been really good, and I think they also see the value of that program.
So what are some of the duties of the school resource officer?
School resource officer foremost is there for security. Make sure that everyone there, whether it's students, whether it's visitors, whether it's staff, are safe in that school environment. Then, and probably equally as important, it's to be available to, again, talk to the kids. Sometimes I know he tells me that he'll simply stand in the hall, or he'll go down to the lunchroom and eat lunch with the kids or whatever. And to have that ability that where they feel comfortable to come to him and say, I have an issue, or somebody I know may have an issue, and how do we help them, or where do I go? So that's a big part of it. Also is responsible for all the security in regard to events that would be football, basketball, softball, whatever that may be. Takes care of all that for us also. And then he teaches back as needed in classes, whether that's stranger danger or other classes like that at the lower levels. And included in that, he does updates for all the staff as far as safety drills, things along that line.
Wow, so lots going on with him.
Very, very busy position.
Yeah. So, you can just see just the advantages of that, because, with a tax on schools and everything, that would act as a big deterrent, I would think, just to have somebody there and available.
Well, and that's one of the reasons that we have a marked car parked outside the school. A person that intends to do evil, and it's been proven over and over, looks for a soft target. So if someone was to come to our schools and pull up and see that car sitting there, it's kind of our first line of defense. So absolutely, I think it deters a lot of activity in the schools when you have an SRO.
Now, I know a big event for you this year was you were actually invited to Washington, D.C., to the White House.
I was.
Yeah.
I was. As I've said to everybody who asked me about this, I have no idea how the chief of police in Baltimore, Ohio, got invited there, but I was very honored to go. It was the 21st Century Policing Initiative, and basically what it was, they brought in experts in all different fields and topics and discussed where we were, where we are currently or perceived to be today, and where the government, the federal government in particular, would like to see law enforcement move to in the future. Some of it was very enlightening. Some of the speakers obviously understood the dynamics and problems of modern law enforcement. Some of it, quite honestly, I really think probably is not something that is ever going to take traction. A lot of it that was because of, you would almost have to tear the entire culture down of what law enforcement has always been and what it stands for in the United States, and start from scratch. And certainly that's not practical. Along with the some of the programs, and you know, as an administrator, the government many times is famous for saying, here are things that are great for you to do, now you figure out how to pay for it. And that was a lot of the issues that we discussed. Was it's great that you have this available and you say here are things that will help. How do we finance it? You know, we're barely able to put gas in cruisers and tires on cars and pay our staff, and you want us to dedicate another, 40, 50, 60,000 into an untested program. So it was probably 60-40, I think, and talking to chiefs from all over the United States, I think everybody came away with that. And I will say that they told us up front, a lot of this we're going to put out here for discussion purposes, and we want your feedback as to whether or not this is something that we should or could do.
Well, and it always gets back to the concept, and you guys do this so well in Baltimore, is know your people, know the community, engage the community, let them know that you're there to help. And we are just so blessed in Fairfield County in this area that we really do have strong community support, that we have citizenry that is involved. Our Community Watch program, Chief, is just tremendous because we have 80, 90 members at volunteer hours, but that's an outreach from the sheriff's office into the community. And when you see things in these major cities today, and I think the thing that's made the news recently is what's going on in Chicago, where they've had over 4,000, if I remember correctly, people shot. They've had over 700 homicides. And in that kind of environment, it makes it very tough for the officers to do their job. And especially, I know you have a background in detective work, but it would be very difficult to be able to investigate those number of homicides because, as you know, those are labor intensive. I just don't know how they could do it.
Well, and it's interesting because one of the things I discovered when we were there having discussion is there were people representative of a lot of the bigger cities, and the best way I could describe it is it was almost like they had been beaten down. They are trying every day, they're doing the best they can every day, but the community support is not there for a lot of reasons, and some of it, quite honestly, is because there are powers out there who are doing everything they can to drive a wedge between law enforcement and the people we serve. And ultimately, I think that's the most important thing that every law enforcement officer has to believe is we're serving these people. Back to Baltimore, one of the things that we do is and it seems silly, but we basically know places to go to sit down, and sometimes we sit down and have lunch with somebody. Sometimes we go to a meeting. What do you think about this? Is this something good for the community? And it's really, for the bigger cities, it's rough. We're working a case with Detroit Police Department right now out of a shooting that occurred up there, and the victim lives in Baltimore. And talking to that detective, he said right now he had over 100 cases involving people who had been shot that he hadn't even touched yet because they're so overwhelmed. Where do we go from here, sort of thing. And I think that, anything we can do to make it better, obviously, but sometimes it comes down to how do you feed the masses when you've only got the one fish, so to speak,
That's right. That's right. And something on kind of a personal note, before we went on there, I understood that you were kind of helping with some of the feed some of the homeless people in Columbus as part of a ministry.
Our church partnered with a couple other churches and the Salvation Army. And the Salvation Army supplies us with a truck. I keep describing it as an ice cream truck because I don't know what else to call it.
Right.
But it has heaters and all sorts of things to prepare food. And we go out and, on an average Sunday night, we'll probably turn out maybe 300 meals, something like that. And what we're reaching out to, what we're trying to get to is the hardcore homeless. initially, and then from there we move on to families that, there's a lot of families out there that are still slipping through the cracks. They buy their food, and for whatever reason it doesn't stretch long enough, and by the end of the week it's tough. You've got kids that are hungry at home. So Salvation Army's been a great resource for us. Our minister, our pastor, has been just absolutely outstanding in keeping us on track with where we need to be and what we need to do, and so that's been very important. And a part of that for me has been talking to these people. We go into downtown Columbus and pretty hardcore homeless, and when you begin to sit back and talk to these people, and once they see you, when you first come, they just are standoffish. Once you're there a few weeks, then they begin to recognize that you're there to help them, and they'll start to talk. And it's amazing how many of those people will tell you, I am here only because I'm addicted to, whether it's heroin, which seems to be most prevalent, or the opiates. And almost all of them tell me, I started out on prescription opiate painkillers, and one day my doctor just said, you can't have any more, and cast me adrift, and the next thing you know, I'm doing heroin. So really kind of tears your heart out when you deal with them. We try to feed them both through food and spiritually also. We think that's a huge component of this, and so far it's been a really good program.
Well, I appreciate you and your wife being involved in that, and it speaks volumes for you and certainly your church to do those kind of things and to go into some tougher neighborhoods. And like you mentioned, there's such a connection between the social ills, the homeless, the crime, all associated with drug activity, and certainly that has been problematic nationwide. And that's a whole other program. We have Commander Lowe on here from the Major Crimes Unit, and we're going to have him a number of times this year to kind of keep updated on what's going on in our community. Although I do think, at least with Fairfield County, that we've made a lot of headway. With our Major Crimes Unit, with some of the programs. And we've just got a minute or so I'm probably not going to go into this week, but this week. But what I'd like to do is have you back next week, because I know you have a program that's gotten a lot of attention where you are actually doing something for folks that are addicted. If they want help, they can come to you.
That's right.
So we can share about that next week.
Absolutely.
Chief, I appreciate you being here. And again, congratulations on being invited to Washington, D.C.
Thank you very much.
And I think it speaks volumes about you. I mean, you have a good reputation, so I could understand how they would select you and all the good things that are going on in Baltimore.
Thank you so much.
Chief Mike Tussey with us this week from the Baltimore Police Department, a veteran lawman and served many, many years in Westerville and have been the chief. And how long in Baltimore now, Chief?
10 years.
10 years?
10 years.
Oh, my golly. Seems like just yesterday. Well, the clock on the wall says we've got to go. Do appreciate you, the viewers and listeners that join us each and every week. Certainly the staff here and the students at Fairfield Christian Academy, where this actually is produced, and our behind the scenes, our executive producer, Kelly Roberts. Until next week, same time, same place. God bless, and we'll see you right here.